Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and this is my reading wrap up for March 2025. I have a kitty that's just wanting all of the fusses and all of the attentions. She's too cute. So I actually have been holding off starting this video because I did complete something, but in February I didn't do a reading wrap up because I read, well, there was one vlog where I finished one book and I don't think I finished anything else outside of that, so there was no point in doing a reading wrap up at all because of that. And then I have been in a really bad reading slump up until about 3 days ago, where I picked up a manga and read it and was like, right, okay, I still don't want to start my reading wrap up until I know it wasn't a fluke. Thankfully, I've now got these two physical and 2 or 3? Did I read last night? 3 others. So I now have 5 manga to talk about. So I have 5 things for this wrap up. I also have a little book haul that I'm going to talk through. So the first thing I read was Watakoi, Love is Hard for Otaku, Volume 1. This was a reread. And I remembered one of the things that I didn't like so much about this one is the storyline isn't exactly linear and it's a bit jumpy. It's a little bit confusing for the first couple of chapters, but once we get settled into the story, it's great. I've also gone and watched they've got a 1-season anime. Apparently it's not going to have a sequel, which is really annoying because the anime is really good and I would have liked to see the end of the story. But it's basically a group of otaku who are, you know, anime, gaming nerds, that kind of thing. She has struggled to find a boyfriend. Every time in the past a boyfriend has found out that she is an otaku, she gets dumped. She then starts at this company, sees her childhood friend works there, and he basically goes, well, why not date me? I'm not the biggest fan of her because she's kind of like keeps saying, oh, you're not my type, I don't like you, I'm not attracted to you, and yet agrees to date him even though she knows she's not interested in him in that way. Meanwhile, we realise that he is besotted with her. He is absolutely in love with her and has been since they were children, and I just felt like it was a bit imbalanced. I did still have a good time with it. I did still give it 4 stars, but after now watching the anime where it goes a bit further than this, not by much but a little bit, I'm not entirely sure if I do want to continue the series or not. I like how it represents different types of nerddom and how you can be an otaku and still be very, very different to another otaku. So like one of them is a cosplayer, one of them's more into boy love, one of them's an anime nerd, one of them's a gaming nerd, but they all come together in different ways and I just loved it and it was great. And I will say I'm way more invested in the second couple in this rather than these two. I'm more interested in these guys. He especially is just goals. So I read that one. Then another reread last night I finished and I was like, okay, I now remember this series is Zombie by Peach Pit. There's 3 main characters. 2 of them are guys who 6 months ago were in a car crash. Everyone else died except for them. We then meet our main character, Michiru, who has this ability that when someone is close to death, she can see these rings around their neck. Like when you are sort of nearish, it's like a pale grey, and then at the moment of death it turns black or very dark grey. And she looks at them and sees this ring on their necks, tries to warn them that, hey, you know, death is imminent. And then she discovers that in actual fact they are already dead and they were saved by the ferryman who now has contractually put them into this bind. Basically they were like, we don't want to die, and he was like, I will keep you alive, but you now owe me a shit ton of money and you can pay it off by fighting these demons and monsters. So that's what they're doing, is they are trying to pay off their zombie loan by defeating the monsters. They recruit Michiru to help them because she can see the rings and she can identify the monsters where they can't. And so yeah, she gets involved in all of this. She starts off as this character that is very meek and mild. She lets people walk all over her. She doesn't speak out. She doesn't say what she wants to say. And she even admits that even though she wouldn't take her own life, she's not opposed to not being alive. And one of the boys in particular is just like, well, die then. Like, don't waste air. Like, if you don't want to be here, don't. But by the end of the story, end of the first volume, she's very much like, I want to live. I don't want to die. Please help me. And so we start to see her come out of herself a little bit. And the first volume ends with her finally joining them and teaming up with them in an official capacity, not just being forced to do it. So I've remembered that I do enjoy this story, and I don't think I finished it when I was younger, but I would like to try and finish it now. And then last night I binged back to back Spy Family volumes 10, 11 and 12, and oh my god, Lloyd's backstory had me tearing up. It was adorable, but it was also very heart-wrenching. I love how we got the origin story with how he met Frankie, and Frankie is such a good character. I love him, and it's one of those that even though we've got the overarching plot, we do still get little tidbits of sort of slice of life in there as well. And while I do feel that the slice of life, it's starting to become more imbalanced, the slice of life seems to be more prevalent at the minute, I do appreciate that the story is still going along, and I'm still kind of intrigued as to where it's going to go. I gave volume 10, which was like Lloyd's backstory and all of that, 4.5. Then volume 11, which is, I'm not going to say for spoilers like exactly what happens, but I will just say that there is a bus hijacking for the school bus that Anya is on. That one got 5 stars for just the emotional pull, the way that it made me laugh. Anya, as always, is just fantastic. And certainly at the end, when it was like, there was a moment with Lloyd where I was just like, oh, he actually cares. This isn't just for the mission, he cares. And we are starting to get a few more of those kind of moments now, where you start to realise that, like, obviously you know that Yor genuinely cares, but with Lloyd it's always been difficult to read. Does he genuinely want to now take an invested interest in Anya, or is he still just going along with it? And his thoughts are less, like, even though they are still very mission oriented, he seems to now have a few more thoughts where he's genuinely wanting Anya to do well and seems to be rooting for her. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to keep developing. I'm still not a fan of Yuri or, oh, what's her name, Fiona. Still don't like those two very much. They are way too obsessed, and Yuri just gives me ick. Like, I know it's not sexual, I know it's not like incestuous, but it still gives me ick the way he's just so obsessed with his sister. It's like, dude, get a girlfriend, get laid, get a life. But yeah, there were some incredible moments, and like I said, the fact that we got way more of Lloyd's backstory and we started to understand his motivations and where he came from, just loved it. So I had a great time with that. I had to make myself put my tablet down so I could sleep, because it was like 3 in the morning by this point. But then, as I said, I woke up this morning and I have parcel. So even though I do my hauls now seasonally, when I do get things in, if I'm doing a wrap up, I'll talk, if like I'm filming a wrap up clip and I've got a haul, I'll show it. So I was feeling the sads and felt like I needed to do something to treat myself. It was also payday, and I have said that on paydays I will allow myself to get a couple of things. So it was also for World Book Day, Waterstones did double points. So I was like, do you know what? With that little combination, I bought myself manga. First of all, I just looked up the various ones that I want to continue that I've got on these shelves. Mao by Rumiko Takahashi. I own volumes 1 to 3. I had a look, and volumes 4 and 5 were both on offer for £4 each. Basically like buy one get one free at that point at those prices. So I picked up volumes 4 and 5 so I can continue that story. And then, as we know, I have started my One Piece journey. After reading the entire East Blue arc, I am heavily invested, at least for now. I might get fed up with it, I might get a bit bored later on, but certainly at this moment in time, as we go into the Baroque works, I am heavily invested. So I have got the next 2 omnibus versions. So I've got volumes 13 through to 18 now. I rewatched the live action and it was really cool because when in the first watch there were sort of little bits and pieces that I just didn't like. When we first meet Zorro and there's the guy behind him that's like, I'm from Baroque Works and we want to recruit you. I kind of didn't, it kind of went over my head a little bit. I didn't really get the reference. It didn't mean anything to me. It was just like, oh, cool. Now that I've sort of read up to volume 12 and I have had an introduction to the Baroque works and I've realised who they actually are, I'm like, when I was rewatching the live action, I was like, oh, that actually means something now. And it's just been really fun having those little moments throughout the series where I'm like, these things mean things. So I have been definitely enjoying that. So yeah, I just decided to treat myself and got myself some manga that are going to go on my shelves. But yeah, that is a very long wrap up to say that I've read 5 things. So I'm gonna go and I should be back soon with my next update. Yeah, and really hoping that it's not gonna be too long before I'm back with another update. So wish me luck and I'll see you in a few seconds. Hopefully to not say I didn't read anything. So let's see. Hi, I'm back with not 1, not 2, but 3 more completed things. Are they novels? No. Still having trouble on that front. However, I did get the most stunning ARC. I think it's, I don't know if it's the prettiest one I've ever had, but it's definitely up there. Let me get it. This absolute a bad bitch of a stunner. Look at this. Look how pretty. It's so gorgeous. I love the colors. We got a tiger. And it is the Prince Without Sorrow that actually comes out next week. I have started it. It arrived yesterday. I read the first chapter before I went to bed. Obviously I can't fully review it or whatever, but at the minute it's from what I've read so far and a couple of reviews that I've seen. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to end up being, this is either going to end up being a DNF or not the best review for me, but we shall see. It could turn it around and the things that I've not enjoyed so far could sort themselves out. We will see, but that's not what we're here for. We are here for the books I have completed. 3 more manga have been done, and 2 of them are ARCs from NetGalley. I am smashing it for manga this year. Like, I think this is going to be my manga year. I'm not really going to push myself with novels, but definitely manga. I'm like, I should have set my goal at 100 or 150 because we're in March and I'm already pushing close to 40, and my goal is 75 for the whole year, so I'm like, I thought I was going to slow down my manga reading. I have not. I'm going to start with Spy Family because that continues on from the last clip. And so I've now read volumes... Wait, did I say 3? 4. There's 4. I've now read volumes 13 and 14. Obviously, we're getting quite into the story now. A few people have started to critique, and even I was starting to think, I'm starting to feel the story needs to progress more. But I think one of the big things with this is, like, obviously it was marketed as this spy series, and I think in reality it's more of a slice of life where, you know, they just happen to be a spy and an assassin and stuff. So any progress on the storyline is going to be very slow. I reckon it's probably going to be like another 10 or so volumes before we start to get any real significant changes to the plot. And like, yeah, sometimes I get a bit annoyed, especially as it keeps segueing. So we'll be having this really amazing scene, something really awesome will be happening, and then 2 seconds later it's gone back to like a day in the life thing, and then it will go back, and it's kind of like, it feels like the chapters keep slotting in the wrong place, and that annoys me a little bit. Like, I would rather it be, say, the first half of the volume be about the main plot, and then the second half of the volume be all the little sort of sidebar slice of life stuff. So then it's like, you know, if you're in it for the plot, you can read the plot bit. If you're in it for the slice of life, wholesome cuteness, you can read that bit. It's just very jarring when, especially there was like a scene, I think I mentioned in one of the previous clips, there was a scene involving like a bus takeover, like being hijacked. And, you know, right in the midst of that, it then it went onto a tangent to something else, and I was like, no, go back. You know, just really annoying. We did have a couple of things. There was a particular thing with Lloyd when he was as Twilight and Yor's brother Yuri, and I actually genuinely was like, oh, is something about like people about to realise who people are? And obviously it didn't. But it was really seeing them face off. I was so invested, and, you know, having Twilight sort of pull back because he's Yor's brother, and he was like, wow, anyone else, I wouldn't have hesitated to kill him. And then Yuri was like, well, why did he not kill me? Is it because he knows me? And it was just like, oh, okay, snap. That was really interesting and cool. We've had the inclusion of a new character. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he is a very elderly gentleman who clearly has dementia or Alzheimer's, something like that. He has just moved into the same apartment building as the Forgers, and it turns out he used to be a professor at a university, and he ends up taking on, like, him and his wife take on the role of grandparents towards Anya. And again, it was really, really sweet, especially with Yor being like, Anya's never had grandparents, so this is really lovely for her. And then she was like, wait, I never really had grandparents either, so this is really lovely for me too. And it was just so wholesome and sweet having that little moment. And then we've also learnt that Anya has a secret gift, and there is a subject at school that she actually excels at. We don't know why, we don't know how, but she's actually really, really good at this one subject. So we then get into the arc where it's like the end of term exams and her trying desperately to not end up in a different class to everyone else because she's not clever enough. And we get a lot of stuff from that, which is really cute. And then it all ended with a little like school dance. And of course, Damien wants to dance with Anya, but doesn't want to be obvious about it. And just, oh, so cute. The sweetest and cutest little beans. I'm not always a fan of the school setting, especially like Master Hendrickson is starting to grow on me a little bit, but his obsession with elegance. Oh. But yeah, both of those got 4.5 stars, and yeah, I still continue to love this series. Even when it goes a bit weird, I still love it. And then we move on to our NetGalley arcs. So the first one is Sketchy. I cannot remember the author name. I need to write these things down. The premise of this story is you've got a woman in her 30s who works at kind of a bit of a dead-end job in a video rental store. Well, it's not a video rental, it's like a DVD rental store. And she's kind of in a bit of a rut. She's got a boyfriend who is a bit of a nobody. He is quite willing to just let his parents do everything. He's not really bothered about going for it. He doesn't want to work. He wants to just sit at home, and he keeps saying that he's going to become a great screenwriter, but then does nothing towards actually attaining that. So he's that kind of guy where it's like he just expects that everything's going to happen for him, and in the meantime his parents will dote on him. And so, you know, she's just in this bit of a rut. She gets invited to a reunion with a bunch of her high school friends. They all are still friends, they hang out. And she's kind of lamenting the fact that, you know, one of them, they celebrate her engagement while they're there. A bunch of them are married. Some of them have now got kids. And they all seem to be, you know, they wear really lovely clothing. They all look put together. They look like they've got it sorted. And she's kind of like, well, what am I even doing with my life? She then asks her boyfriend if they can move in together. And he's like, oh no, I don't really want to do that. A few of her friends question it, and they're like, why are you allowing him to do that to you? You've been together for like 7 years. Why are you just content with that? And she's sort of saying, you know, I'm not interested in marriage. I don't really care about all of that stuff. But you can kind of see that something somewhere in her is like, I'm not happy with life. Until one day she sees a group of people who are skateboarding. One of them is female. and she's like, oh wow, she looks so cool, that looks incredible. And it kind of opens up this little rabbit hole for her and eventually leads to her signing up to learn how to skateboard. So she ends up sort of immersing in the world of skateboarding, goes on to like Instagram and watching videos, and is sort of trying to find who this mysterious skateboarding woman is. And like I said, along the journey, she ends up signing up for these classes. Even though that's kind of where we end up at the end of this novel, is her just having started her skateboarding lessons, you can already see that it's giving her a new spark of life. And even though I myself am someone who doesn't board, has kind of always been terrified of skateboards. I had an incident as a kid, it put me off them for life, but I've always been more of a blader anyway. I was very much... My mates would all be on their skateboards or their BMXs. I was always on my rollerblades, and I used to be pretty good. I used to be able to do a few, like going up on the ramps, and I used to do a couple of little tricks and stuff like that. And I never mastered the art of going backwards, which really frustrates me to this day. I never figured that out. But yeah, skating was more my forte, but it kind of reminded me of the joy that it used to bring me, and it reminded me of that feeling when you find something that you know you're gonna love and that you know is gonna bring you joy, like it was with me with K-pop when I first started getting into that. And it was like, you know, now it's 2 years later and it's a very big part of my life and personality at this point. So yeah, I really, really loved that. And for a split second, it made me think about maybe trying skateboarding again. And then I was like, very quickly, there is no way, not with how accident prone I am, there is no way that that is happening. But it still gave me a little moment of joy, and it has made me start to think about getting back into hobbies that, like my jigsaws and things like that, where it's like, you know, let's get back and try and find something that brings me that joy. I do want to continue the series. I gave it 4.5 stars, and yeah, even though I still don't have a big interest in skateboarding, I now have a slight more interest. Between that and the Olympics, I have now got a slight interest, so I might check it out myself at some point. I just won't be getting on a board. I swear one of these days I will remember to charge my batteries between filming. So this one's gonna have to be very, very quick. The final one that I read was actually just this morning, and that was the Ayakashi Demon Hunter's Tainted Wife. This one, I'm going to start with a critique, which I don't really like to do, but I'm going to start with the critique of, I'm not entirely sure what exactly an Ayakashi is, exactly why she's tainted, how, and I'm not really sure how the magic actually works in this world, because that was very badly explained. The world building was not good. That being said, the artwork is one of the most exquisite of anything I've ever read. It's absolutely going to become an all-time favourite for the art and the drawing. It's so well detailed, the characters are so well drawn, everything is so immersive and gorgeous. It was just an absolute feast for the eyes. Normally I'm very fast at reading manga, but with this one I kept slowing down to take in the drawings and to really appreciate the artwork, because it was just so beautiful. I also really loved the main characters. We've got Nanao, who was originally betrothed to the guy that's become the heir of the clan that she is a part of, like one of the big sort of forces in this world. But as a child, she was tricked by her cousin and ended up becoming tainted by this orangutan demon thing. And so as a result, she has been marked, she is now tainted, and immediately became an outcast. The engagement was cancelled, and she now lives her life as someone who is dirty, unclean, people won't let her talk. She has to wear this mask all the time to hide herself, and she basically lives in a rundown hut and sleeps on a pile of hay. However, there is something about her, again, it's been poorly explained, but in this world, it's like the women who have the strongest essence about them, they prepare things like breakfasts and meals because they infuse it with their power and it gives people benefits. Something like that. It's still unclear to me at this point. And so, because she is basically the one with the most power in her village, she is the one that has to prepare, who was originally her fiance. She prepares his meals and things, but then her cousin passes it off as her own. And yeah, she gets treated like absolute shit. Then there is a guy called something, brain has forgotten his name, But he is from another clan and they're like the most powerful of all of the clans. He is the heir to it and he comes to have a look for a bride. He sees her, he immediately senses how powerful she is and is kind of like, this is intriguing. I wonder why she's so powerful yet is tainted by a demon and is treated this way. And then shortly after, while he's visiting, she spots these little spirit things attacking the baby of her ex-fiance and her cousin, because they're now married. It was basically the cousin was like, I'm going to trick you so I can steal your fiance and marry him myself. You know, classic alpha bitch. And she spots the baby being attacked by these spirits. She tries to intervene. Her cousin thinks that she's attacking the baby and that the scratches all over the baby are from her. So the husband comes in. He's then like, you know, physically assaults her and causes her to bleed because she smacks her head. In the process, her mask is taken off to reveal that she has grown into the most beautiful woman that has ever existed. And suddenly all of the men forget that they have brains up here because everything rushes down there, and suddenly they're all infatuated with her. And he suddenly goes from hating her and thinking she's a piece of trash to going, oh my God, I forgot how much I loved her. And she's so beautiful, I must now protect her. And she's like, bitch, it is too late, you know? But because she's bleeding, the other guy comes in and he tastes her blood. And obviously he then tastes how powerful she is. And he's like, do you know what? I'm going to claim you as my bride and get you away from this hellhole. He's like, I will cherish you. I will adore you. I will be loyal to you. I will not take concubines. All I ask for in return is that you be my wife and that you do your duties, which she thinks means bed duties. It turns out it's something different, but I will let you find that out for yourself. But oh my God, their dynamic, it's a little bit questionable at first. I'm like, is he really interested in her as a person, or is he just interested in her because of her abilities? But I do think there is something there. I do think he does genuinely want to help her. And she in particular starts off being quite meek and subdued, but you do see flashes that she may not actually be like that. So certainly as the series progresses, I am very excited to see what happens there. I think she's going to be a badass, and in my review I said that I hope that eventually she realises how powerful she is, claims that strength, goes back to her original town and just delivers the biggest revenge possible while her husband stands on the side cheering her on, because so far that is the kind of attitude he's had towards her. Is, you know, I will support you, I will cheer you. If you want to smack someone, I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to make sure I hold them down so that they can't run away. He's got that kind of attitude and I love that. She at the minute is a little bit bland, but that is pretty typical in these kind of romances. All the attention and personality seems to go to the male interest. I think because obviously the books are generally geared towards the female reader, so they're like, hey, let's make the guy as interesting and amazing as possible because he's the one that we want them to fall in love with. And then the female generally does tend to get a bit of a like bland personality syndrome. But like I said, there are flashes in there of her being fantastic and I'm very excited to see when that starts coming through. There's also stuff with spirits and different demons that are bound as servants to this lord as well, and I'm really interested to find out more from their stories. But like I said, the world building was very kind of clunky and not well explained. The pacing was quite fast as well, so I was a little bit like, I wish the first volume had stopped at about the halfway point, like where we got to halfway through the first volume where she was like, please, I will marry you, just get me away from here. I feel like that should have happened at the end of the first volume, and then we should have got more moments watching the two of them. They would say like a 2 or 3 week period, and we could have seen them sort of have these moments before the mask fell off and she was revealed. I feel like then it would have felt more genuine that he already had an interest in her as a person, and then he saw how beautiful she was and was just like icing on the cake. But yeah, I did have a great time with that. Again, I didn't give it 5 stars. That one was 4 stars. But like I said, that artwork is so beautiful. I would continue reading it just for that alone. So yeah, 4 more done. I think I've still got at least 3 or 4 more manga to get done this month. So I'm going to try and keep these a bit short because I've realised how much I'm rambling. So yeah, I will be back soon, hopefully, with the next update. Unshockingly, I've got manga updates. Shockingly, I also have a novel update. I originally started to film another video that I was doing to try and get me out of my reading slump. Picked a book thinking I wasn't really gonna get to it, or it was gonna, you know, be a bit of a failed video. It didn't fail. I ended up reading the whole book in one day. I have now decided I'm not going to continue that video. I'm going to do it another time with a different set of books. The next clip might seem weird, but that's because, like I said, I did originally film it for a different video. So this is my review for Once Upon a K-Prom, and then I'll talk about the other 2 manga that I've got. So this is Once Upon a K-Prom. This is a YA contemporary romance with Elena, who she just feels very overshadowed and overlooked in life in general. She has got one really good friend, but as a child she had her absolute best friend in the world, Robbie. But when they were 10, he moved away to Seoul with his family, and eventually he trained to become a K-pop idol and is now in one of the biggest groups in the world. They've not spoken to each other in years. She's grown up to be, like I said, quite meek, quite mild, and feels very sort of overshadowed in life, and does compare herself quite a bit to him. She's kind of like, look at everything he's done and I've not really done anything. And then he made a promise to her when they were kids that he would come back and ask her to prom, and she was always like, yeah, whatever, and then he does. So all of that unfolds. You get glimpses of his bandmates, and like one of the bandmates, the leader of the group, is his cousin, and we get a side story there. And we learned that the agency that they belong to are a lot more open about dating and stuff, but they're concerned, because this was my biggest concern, is knowing how fans are and how so many K-pop idols' careers have been destroyed because of dating scandals, and the jealousy and the hatred that the fans have towards anyone that's dating an idol. Even the hatred they turn towards the idol themselves for daring to look at a woman like they had any chance. But it's still this thing of, even now, K-pop idols are seen as they have to be only there for their fans. They're not allowed to have anything for themselves, and I hate that. It's the one thing that I vehemently despise and wish would change. Especially Korean netizens are just, they scare me and anger me in equal measures. In this one, their agency has kind of made it an open statement that they are allowed to date. There's no clause there. It's kind of like with ATs, they have a very relaxed, like compared to other groups and other agencies, they're a lot more relaxed. They are allowed to date. There's no thing that says then they can't, they won't get fired if they're caught to be dating, things like that. So what they decide originally is that they wanted Robbie to kind of reconnect with Elena, kind of almost tease out to the fans to make the fans believe that maybe they're actually dating, so that they can gauge how the fans will react. And if they react well to it and they're supportive of it, then they know that, okay, great, we can go public with something else and some other things that are going on. However, Robbie very quickly realizes that, like, he only goes along with it because he wants to write his own music, and they've basically said, that's not happening unless you do what we tell you. And if you go along with this plan and if you do this, then we will allow you to produce your own music for like a solo album. And he's like, I can't not do that, especially with the way that K-pop industry works and the way that they control everything. He does genuinely also care for Elena and has genuinely missed her. But, you know, we get to see that kind of side of things. At times I felt like, okay, yeah, we've got the typical third act blow up. Even though it resolved very, very quickly, it resolved so quickly it almost felt like it wasn't even necessary to have in the first place. But one thing I definitely loved, I love the kind of the way that it does discuss the dark side of the K-pop industry, and it doesn't shy away from that, and it doesn't try to glamorize K-pop. It shows some of the good sides, like the energy of the performances and all of that, but it definitely does then show how that side of being controlled, having a lot of that autonomy taken away from you, you don't get to be your own person. It's a reminder that the K-pop idols that you see, yes, a lot of the time you do still see their genuine personalities, but in many, many cases we do see this kind of manufactured persona. There was a lot of that discussion in here, which I did appreciate. I also liked how we did get some really interesting conversations with Elena, and we started to understand her. She gets called out at one point for quitting things before it can get too difficult. Like when she takes up hobbies, when it starts to get to a point where it's going to be more difficult, or she's going to fail, or she's not going to do well, she would rather quit than experience that failure. And I don't always, but I know my art, I'm the same. I'll pick up my paints and I'll start painting, and then right as it starts to get to a bit where it's a bit tricky or a bit more advanced, I'll stop, because I don't want to see that I've done something badly, and I just would rather not do something than fail. So I'm getting over that. I am working on that, but I definitely felt it. But it was nice, I'm not going to say exactly what, but it was really lovely at the end when she started to actually switch a little bit from having this crisis inside of I'm supposed to know who I want to be and where I want to go, to having a couple of moments in the very final chapter where she's figuring that out. That was a really beautiful full circle there. I did have a really good time. Was it a 5-star? I do feel it needed a bit more depth, and I would have liked a little bit more discussion on the dark side of the K-pop industry. People like myself who enjoy K-pop, as well as kids who are this age range, they will also be reading it. And I feel like some of the messages could have been a little bit more, try to be a better generation of K-pop supporters than maybe previous generations and current generations are. Like, you have the power to change things and this is how you can do it. I feel like a little bit more of that could have been brought in, but considering, like I said, I sat and I read this in an entire day, and I just, every time I put it down, I just wanted to get back to it, and I had a great time, and I did love the cast of characters in this. It is definitely a 4. I haven't run it through Corpile, but it's definitely a minimum of a 4. It might go up to a 4.5 because of how intrigued I was and how much I was enjoying it. We shall see. Editing Kirsty will do her thing. I could definitely see this becoming a series. Certainly, like, at least 2 or 3 of the other band, like, group members, they could do their own stories, but I'm not sure. Let me have a look. It looks like this is just a standalone, but I can see that this could end up having a sequel. But at the minute, it is just a standalone, which is a shame. But yeah, so like I said, I had a great time with this. Fingers crossed that this has actually helped with the slump, and that maybe I will get my reading mojo back a little bit more. But we shall find out, I guess. Wow, the lighting's gone weird because it's sort of, we're at sunset, so the light's gone a bit blue. Hello again. It's now time for 2 more manga that I have updates for. Another one that I did just yesterday was Sheltering Eve by Rie Oruga. This author is the author of Perfect World that I do not have in reaching distance because it's on the top shelf, which I've only read the first volume of, but both times I've read it, I've given it 5 stars. I've absolutely loved it. This one didn't quite get 5 stars, it got 4.5, but a theme I'm noticing with this author's work is that she is amazing at blending that mix of having a really emotional, heavy topic and then blending it in with a kind of romance and a sweet, wholesome. And honestly, it is so refreshing because I do find a lot of manga romance particularly tends to be a little bit too very light and gentle, which I don't mind. I like to sometimes just read something light and fluffy, but it is nice when there is something there, like a disability or something socially that's getting in the way of that relationship, or present some sort of adaptation that the pair have got to make for their relationship. And I find that this author is actually fantastic at that. This one follows 2 teenagers and it's a very even balance between the 2 main characters. So it's set at a kids' home. These are both 2 individuals who were taken from their parents. His dad was very physically abusive and left him with a massive burn scar on his back, and so it was deemed too unsafe and he wasn't ever to contact, his dad was never to contact him again, and he was taken away there. She came from a family where the mum had mental issues, and her mum became very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive. And not gonna lie, I went into this story knowing that there were triggers, knowing that there were warnings about, you know, child abuse and neglect. Stupid me forgets that there is more than one type of abuse. And it was when I did my teacher training that I learned for the very first time to put words to my own growing up. There was a lot of neglect and a lot of abuse, and it's made it very difficult for me as an adult, but I did not expect this to bring back some of those memories. And there was one thing in particular that her mother says to her in a flashback, and I just kind of froze, and I was like, I need to step away for a split second. It was only for a minute. I literally just got up, made myself a cup of tea, came back, and I was fine. But I just wasn't expecting a verbatim copy of what my mum on a semi-regular basis would say to me. And I was just like, okay. So if that is something that is a trigger for you, if you do struggle either from your own experiences or just in general with seeing kids going through that kind of thing, please do not read this. It will trigger you. Like, it triggered me, and that's not usually a trigger for me, so do be aware of that. We start off with them both as 10 years old. She's just joined the home. He's been there a couple of years. She gets picked on by one of the older boys, and he kind of beats the guy up and is like, don't let people push you around. If you need anything, I'll help you. And she develops this attachment to him that now that they are 16 and they are thinking about their futures, because at the time the story was written and is set in 2018, in Japan, once a child in a care home hit the age of 18, they had to leave. It has changed now. There are updates to those laws, and it's now got a sort of wider window, and there's more programs in place to help sort of between the age, I think it's like 18 and 20. But in 2018 they didn't, and it was just a case of, you're 18, here's a bag of your stuff, off you go. They're both in this situation where they're thinking about that future. She is coming from a point of, I don't want to lose him, I don't want to have to say goodbye to him, I want him to be in my life forever. She's kind of formed a bit of an unhealthy attachment to him, I will say. It's understandable considering their situation and their home life, but it's also concerning that she can't function without him, kind of thing. However, he has picked up on that, and he does actually say to her at one point, you need to interact with other people because it is not healthy to only be with me. So at least he is setting that boundary, but he's also not very good at keeping to that. Whereas he has grown up and he's now thinking about his future and getting a place. He's got sort of 4 or 5 different jobs to try and make some money so that when he leaves he can afford his own apartment. He's looking at college, where she's stressing and panicking about the future and is kind of spiraling every time she thinks about it. He is thinking about the future, he's planning for it and actively working for it. He's kind of got this thing of, once I'm an adult and I've left the system, I'll no longer be a system kid and I'll no longer be treated differently, which kudos, I fully get. And we see that in the story where there are a couple of times where they are treated badly, because like there's one point that involves some shoplifting when she's with this guy, and immediately everyone is like, she's from the care home, so it must be her. I do like that it shows that reality, and the first volume just kind of sets that up. It gives us a look at when they were younger. It shows them bonding as kids, which I really appreciate. It showed what life is like for them living there. It showed certain things that used to really upset her now don't upset her as much, but then other things upset her more. It shows that she struggles with anxiety. It shows some of the downsides of living in that kind of situation. Like she says at one point, she's always desperate for it to be a bit more quiet and for everyone to go so that she can have some peace and quiet, but then every time there are fewer people she gets really bad anxiety and gets really severe insomnia and starts to feel ill. So it shows a really complex world, and I really like that. And then right at the end something happens that sets up for the future, and I was like, okay, I feel like this is going to be the thing that's going to push these two, because at the minute they are just friends. It's obvious that she's in love with him, but I think at the moment he kind of sees her more as like a little sister than in a romantic sense, and I think she's got a not very healthy codependence on him. So I'm hoping that the thing that is being teased and the thing I think is going to happen is going to be what makes him realise that actually I'm in love with her, makes her realise that I can stand on my own and I shouldn't like need him, but I want him. And I'm hoping that that's going to happen. I did really enjoy it. I did go through the emotions and I have given it 4.5 stars. And that was a really long talk and I'm sorry that that clip's going to be so long. And then the other one that I've read is actually a reread, and that is Tenkout by Rihito Takari. I was going through my manga shelves because, heads up alert, I am in the planning stages with Jonah for the next round of Adventure-a-thon. What I do when I do my recommendation video, I go through every single book and I match it to any of the prompts that it might fit. But while I was going through it, I pulled this off the shelf and I was like, I don't really remember much about this. And then I was like, I think I need to reread this because from memory, I didn't have the best time, and from memory, I don't know if this is a series I want to continue. And I did a reread and we follow, I can't remember his name, Shiratani, who has OCD and has quite severe OCD. And this one day he is with his boss, who's like the president of this company. The president steps out of the car, he doesn't, and then he notices that there is a truck coming and his boss is about to get hit. But because his OCD and his touch aversion is so strong, he freezes and he hesitates to reach out and grab his boss and pull him to safety. Someone else does step in and help. The boss does end up injured, unfortunately, but it's not as bad as it would have been. And it turns out that the guy that saved the boss and the guy that saved the day is actually a therapist. And so as a kind of thank you, or like thank you for saving my boss and thank you for helping where I couldn't, Kuruze says to Shiratani, I can see signs that you struggle. Do you have OCD? And is it interrupting your life? And he was like, well, I didn't think it was that bad, but this incident has made me realise that actually I need help. And so they start, like Kuruze takes him for lunch and he writes down a list of 10 things, which is why it's called 10 count. And he's like, write down a list of 10 things that you think seem impossible to do right now. Start with the one that you think is like easiest that you would possibly be able to overcome. And then 10 being the one thing that there is no way you can ever see yourself doing it. And so number 1 is like barehanded, touch a door handle. And then 10, he struggles to come up with something, but I think 9 was allow someone else into my apartment, and I think number 10 will be something like, you know, kissing or even sex, something like that. That is like the ultimate form of mess and germs and things like that. But for now 10 is blank, and then Kuruze is like, right, we're gonna start, and I've looked it up and it is a real thing that they do in therapy for people with OCD. It's like exposure therapy. But then Kuruze notices that after a few either weeks or a month or something like that, he realizes that Shiratani is kind of using him a bit as a crutch. He's like, oh, I can do these things, but only if you're with me. So he goes, right, we're not going to see each other anymore, and I want you to find other people to do these activities with and to work through your list with, and then we'll check in after a few weeks. At the moment in this entire first volume, there's one kind of moment that I don't even think is those two having a relationship thing or any feelings, but it definitely, for a reader of that, was like a, that's adorable, that's cute, like this is setting something up moment. But it was also the moment that made Kuruze realise I need to step back. So I think Kuruze is starting to have like tiny stirrings of I might like this guy as more than just a client, and that's a really bad thing. He knows it genuinely will help to step back and have other people, but I think he also is like, I need to step back professionally because this is becoming unprofessional. I did give this one 3.5 because I did kind of find the characters, outside of being a therapist and a client and someone with OCD, they didn't really have anything else going for them. I do think the art is a little not entirely my style. It's nice, but I do feel at times it could be a bit better. But I am intrigued by the actual story and how it's going to go. I'm worried about the romance side because I did see one review that when they eventually do start, Kuruze kind of pushes, and that Shiratani's not always comfortable, and that is a recurring theme within boy love manga that I do not like, is this constant push for questionable consent. And I also don't like how it seems to be even more pushed in queer manga than anything else. It's like, so that is making me a bit nervous. But I have decided I will keep the series going for now. I will at least give the second volume a go, as I've said with multiple manga recently. And if after the second one I'm still kind of like, this is a bit meh, then I'll probably drop the series, but it's intriguing me enough to want to keep going for now. Honestly, I don't know if I'm going to be back with any more. It's the 30th, I think, today. Yes, it is the 30th of March today. It's Mother's Day. I should probably contact my stepmom. I've only got today and tomorrow left of the month. I don't know if I'm going to read anything else. Do have a few things still lined up on my computer from my NetGalley, so I might read 1 or 2 things over the next couple of days, but if not, that will probably be the last one. Okay, that wasn't my final update. I have one last thing to review or talk about. The last thing that I read was a bit of a unexpected, and that is Tokyo Ghoul Volume 1. I remember watching the series right when it first came out. It came out in 2014. I was 13 at the time, and no, I wasn't. Okay, well, I for some reason thought it was a lot older than that. But yeah, Tokyo Ghoul, I remember watching the very first season and I thought it was okay. I just didn't really plan on continuing it. And then it took so long for season 2 to come out that I was like, And I've never, ever been interested in the manga until Steff from Coffee Over Apples was talking about doing a buddy read of it with Natalie, who is pastel writer. Both will be linked below. And in one of Steff's lives, they were talking about that they're doing this buddy read. And I was like, do you know what? I've never buddy read a manga with anyone before. Maybe it'll be quite fun. It could be interesting. So before I knew it, I was in a group chat and I had managed to get hold of the first volume of Tokyo Ghoul online. As I was reading it, the first thing that hit me was just how different the art style was between the manga and the anime, because I know there's usually some difference, but I find that certainly these days, that when a manga is converted into an anime, the animators try really hard to emulate the art style and the drawing style and the characterizations that are in the manga. You would look at it and instantly know, oh yeah, it's that manga, it's that anime, you know? But I found with Tokyo Ghoul, I was looking at it and I was like, if it didn't tell me that this was Tokyo Ghoul, just from the artwork alone, if you'd have shown me a panel and been like, what manga is this? I wouldn't have been able to tell you from what I remember from the anime. It was just so totally different. So that kind of took me a little bit, because I was like, the characters looked wrong for me, because like I said, I started with the anime. It's been about 10 years since I last saw the anime. So it was kind of like for me, it was a bit trippy. The first volume kind of meh, I think, because it does follow the story how I remember it. So it wasn't like anything new. And the first volume of every manga usually is kind of a bit basic, because it's just introducing you to the world and the story. So I did give it 3.5 stars, but it was just kind of a bit like, whatever, generic at this point. So I'm hoping it's gonna be later on that I start to really enjoy it, but I will at least, because it's a buddy read and it's in a group, I will at least try and get the first 3 to 5 volumes done. I think the plan that we've decided on is 1 a week, but even then it's just kind of like a, if you can do 1 a week, do 1 a week. Some people do like multiple a day, others will do maybe 1 a month. I'm gonna aim for a volume every other week just because I've got so much other reading to get done and so many other manga to get through. So yeah, that's that. And in case you do not know what Tokyo Ghoul is, because I forgot to mention, it is a kind of alternate Earth or an alternate reality where there are ghouls as well as humans, and ghouls can only live by feeding off of humans, but ghouls can also disguise themselves as humans, and most of them do, so that they kind of fit in, because there are sort of government organisations and like kind of like police type people who hunt ghouls down. So the best way for ghouls to survive is to blend in with the humans and try not to get caught when they kill and eat one. And the way that some of them have done it is to like group together, and they run a little cafe and they run a business, and others just sort of go it solo. So our story begins with our human Kaneki, who is quite reserved. He loves reading, he loves just sort of the quiet life. His friend Hide kind of doesn't understand that. He's like, there was one bit that made me laugh in the book where Kaneki was like, oh, I'm going on this date with this girl and we're going to a bookstore, and Hide's like, I really don't get that. I don't get it. And I was like, I do! That's like the perfect first date. So he goes on this date, it's going really, really well until she reveals herself to be a ghoul and tries to eat him. Unfortunately, at that moment, I think if I remember rightly, she slammed him into a building and it caused some stuff to fall, and it basically crushed both of them, killed her, nearly killed him. And for whatever unethical reason, and let's just for a second ignore anything to do with ethics and morals and the rules and the law, the doctor on call decided, hey, he needs organ transplants, she's right there, let's just put her organs in him without any form of consent, without any form of, you know, rules. And so when Kaneki wakes up, he is now technically a ghoul. And it just follows him realising this, adapting to it, and starting to learn about his new life as a ghoul. And that's when he goes to the coffee shop where he learns that there is this organisation. And at the end of the volume, we're just kind of at the point where he's met them a couple of times and the offer has been extended for him to join them, and they will help him through this transition and through this time. And so yeah, that's that. So I gave that 3.5 stars. But anyway, that is me for March. I hope you all had a really good reading month. Let me know in the comments what your favourite read of the month was. My battery died again and I don't want to keep walking across the room, so we're just gonna finish here. For novels and books, I only actually completed one, so that means that automatically that one will be going into my book bracket for the end of the year showdown, but I'm not mad about it because I did have a fantastic time. So yeah, let me know in the comments what your favourite things that you read were, and if you didn't read anything, let me know something you got up to in March. In the meantime, I hope you're all good, I hope you're staying safe. Don't forget to check out my Etsy and Patreon as well as everyone that I've mentioned in today's video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!